You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender.
Hulk, go smash.
Mrs. Robinson, you're trying to seduce me.
Here's Johnny.
Oh, wait, 21 gigawatts!
Hey, motherfucker.
You never go ass to mouth.
Now what is so damn funny?
And here we go.
We will not go quietly into the night. We will not vanish without a fight.
Force will be with you. Always.
But the truth! You can't handle the truth! Showtime, everybody! Showtime!
My fellow Americans, welcome to another edition of the For Real Movie Club, live here on Mega Powers Radio and archived on fanboysanonymous.com. It is the 4th of July weekend. America has celebrated another birthday. We're celebrating all damn weekend, even if Independence Day has passed. It is Sunday, July 6th, and we're gathering here to talk about 4 movies that invoke what makes us proud to be Americans. It's American pride here on the For Real Movie Club. I'll be hosting things this evening, station director here at Mega Powers Radio. My name is Mike Paden. With me are 4 folks who just cannot wait to express their love for this country and all these movies representing it. First off, the president of fanboysanonymous.com, Mr. Tony Mango.
Hey, hey.
Representing another writer of fanboysanonymous.com, Mr. Eddie Siqueira.
Yeah, that's me.
Did I pronounce that last name correctly?
Sure, man.
I'm a dumb American, so I don't know how to add spice to things.
We all are,
okay,
so to speak.
And also with us here, both of the Wagos from Addicted to Anime, Steven and Johnna. How you two doing?
Good. How about you?
Absolutely tremendous. Wago, you're quiet.
Good. Go England.
Go England.
All right. Well, we are gathered here to talk about 4 movies handpicked to represent pride in America. And those movies are The Patriot, Invasion USA, Air Force One, and Team America World Police. A little bit of everything in here. A little bit of action, a little bit of comedy, excitement, fighting all of America's greatest enemies going back to the Brits all the way through the Russians and Durkistan. We're going to break them all down. First things first, though, let's do this in chronological order based on who our enemies were with The Patriot. 2000 movie directed by Roland Emmerich, starring Mel Gibson as the lead, also featuring Heath Ledger, number of other people, Jason Isaacs. One of my favorite movies, actually, but going back and watching it now, I kind of saw a little bit of the flaws about it, but let me go around to the other folks here and ask them their initial impressions after watching this movie. Tony, why don't you start us off? What were your initial impressions after watching The Patriot?
The first time I saw The Patriot, it was when I was a lot younger, and now, watching it back a second time, you get a different perspective of things. And I was surprised that I actually didn't have a different perspective about things, which was the surprise of the whole thing, because I originally thought the beginning of the movie was better, and I couldn't remember much of the middle and the end. And this time around, I got to the middle, and I was just kind of bored, and it didn't match up to the beginning of it. So both viewings, I like the beginning of it, and then it falls off.
Well, Steven Wago, why don't you take over there, because I think you had pretty much the opposite point of view, right?
I was fucking bored throughout this entire goddamn movie. The pacing was just so fucking out of whack. It was talk. Oh, we're going to have a bit of action, and it's gone. So I'd lost track of what the hell was going on about halfway through of it. I was like, all right, so when's that douchebag English person going to kill someone else? I like him.
Johnna, how about you? What was your initial impression after watching The Patriot?
I had kind of the opposite reaction to the first review. I had a hard time keeping my attention on it in the very first third of the movie. But the further in I got and the more action there was, the easier it was for me to keep my attention. That was pretty much it. I agree with Steven. The pacing was a little too slow for my liking. But the action part was done well. The acting was good, but the pacing was just so slow.
Well, that is a staple of Roland Emmerich movies. They're always long and they're always awkwardly paced. But coming to Roland Emmerich a little bit later, let's talk about our star of this movie. Oh, wait, actually, I'm sorry. I forgot about Eddie. Eddie, your initial thoughts on this movie?
Yeah, thanks. About time.
Go ahead,
no, it's cool. I was going to make a joke. Damn, I was going to make a joke and just say pass.
But no, I want to talk about it real quick.
Go ahead, please.
See, The Patriot is how shall I put this? It's a serious movie, right? It's well produced. There's no way to get around that. It's got that Mel Gibson thing where he tried to, he did really good with Braveheart, but I think he went kind of like for a cheap attempt at an important historical period. And hey, what do you know? He's going after another country that's not his, and trying to, work on the independence thing again. It kind of worked. I mean, the movie worked. I think The Patriot is at its core essence, a good film. I mean, I think the dialogue is what it has to be. It's what it should be. I mean, it's made. I know a lot of people get bored by it. But I mean, if your favorite movies are action movies or whatever else, along those lines, you're not really gonna dig The Patriot because it's just kind of like it's got that kind of thriller thing. Like they're on the brink of war. They're not sure if it's the colonies are gonna become a country, and so essentially the pacing is, I think, purposefully really slow because it's political in nature. Like if you watch anything historical that takes place in ancient Rome, it's boring as hell. The gladiator was a fluke, right? But back then there was just not much else you could possibly do to tell a story that's not at least a little boring, at least for our point of view.
I think you bring up a very good point that there's a lot of politics involved in this, and a lot of things that have politics thrown into the story typically are a little drawn out, and there's a lot of slow talking before you get to your good meaty stuff. Best thing I can think of to compare that to would be like Game of Thrones, which
exactly. But Game of Thrones has a lot of we have a lady present, but there's some good erotic scenes in Game of Thrones, and the camera angles are great. I mean, technology has come to a point where TV shows and series and movies also are entertaining. I mean, there's so much visual in Game of Thrones as well that the politics doesn't really bother me that much. I mean, sometimes I get lost, but it doesn't even matter because it's pretty soon something cool is going to happen, or some hot chick is going to appear. No. But otherwise, let me just cap off The Patriot real quick. I mean, it got way too cheesy when he just grabs that flag and starts running towards the red coats, and like it's like I mean, like William Wallace yelling freedom, it's just kind of like a spit on the Union Jack. Wait, was there a Union Jack back then?
Don't know.
Yeah, I mean, okay, it was just kind of like the debauchery with English, him being tortured and they're about to kill him. He's like, say it. He's like, no, freedom.
There were a lot of things. That's
just cool. That's just pretty cool. I mean, that's believable. But a guy getting a freaking flag and just like, America, go, and then everybody just, it's kind of cheesy. But apart from that, I thought it's a decent movie. I'll say it's a serious movie. It's something. I think Hollywood, it's one of those moments where Hollywood actually does something that's, in terms of cinematography, it's significant. There you go, I'm done.
They could have used a montage from fucking Team America to make that go a lot faster.
All right. Montage, but
They do a lot throughout this whole movie that they're just shoehorning as much things that they think represents America as they can. Like, oh, let's have him say taxation without representation here. And let's have him say it's a free country over here. And then, of course, that scene at the end where he's running in slow-mo with the American flag. I almost expected, like, a bald eagle to fly in at a frame and just in slow motion fly behind him as he's running with the American flag. It was
that kind of stuff was a little over the top, yeah.
Oh, I liked it. I think it was deliciously cheesy, but what I was going to transfer to next was our main actor, Mel Gibson, very accomplished action actor, along as many other categories. We talked before about his work with Braveheart, which I think is something he borrowed a lot when he created the character for this. Let me go around and ask you guys your thoughts about Mel Gibson's performance in The Patriot. Tony, why don't you start us off on that one?
Mel Gibson's perfectly fine in the movie. Some people can criticize the way that he's been with his public life since these movies have happened and all that, but you can't take away that he was a bankable star, that he's not a bad actor, and I would be surprised to see if anybody, out of all the things that happen in this movie, if anybody would criticize whether or not they believe Mel Gibson being this type of a character. I could see him killing people I could see him being a father.
I could see him making a crappy rocking chair.
Yeah, I can see all that kind of stuff, you know? I don't question that at all, which is something I can't say for everybody else.
Johnna, how about you? How'd you like Mel Gibson's performance?
I agree pretty much. He's done so many different parts, and his acting here was very believable, very genuine, and I can definitely say there's been a few movies I didn't like him in, but I think he did a good, believable, hearty job in this one.
I just recently watched, before I started watching all these American movies, I watched Get the Gringo. I don't know if anyone else has seen that. It's another fairly new Mel Gibson performance, and he just kicks so much ass in there. And it's almost shocking considering the personal things that he's let out that he still is able to put on that kind of performance.
Did they get the Gringo?
They never get the Gringo, unfortunately. It's a lie. The Gringo gets away. It's all a farce.
That's false advertising then. Shit.
Eddie, what did you think of Mel Gibson's performance?
It was pretty consistent, yeah. It's just I don't think he's necessarily a focal point as far as acting is concerned. I don't think anybody necessarily was, although we do grow a specific, inevitably, we go some sort of hatred for, the British
Tavington?
Antagonists. Yeah, there you go. I forgot. The names escape me, but I thought, the acting was sort of... It was what it was. I mean, it fit the movie. It's just I don't think there was a particularly wonderful performance. Although, yeah, Mel Gibson is himself, a good actor. You can't deny that. It's just, when I see him in these more dramatic roles, I think back, back to Mad Max, and I'm just like, man, he was cool.
There's the one scene where one of his sons die, and he starts crying, and I gotta admit, it was not working for me. I'm used to Mel Gibson being a badass, not crying.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's Mel Gibson's kind of like, Tom Cruise or, man, even Schwarzenegger. I mean, they're always like the same. They're not like method actors. I mean, it's Mel Gibson. You get Mel Gibson. You want Mel Gibson, that's what you get. And he's not going to... Did he even win an Oscar for acting? No, apart from Braveheart. I mean, acting-wise.
I think this, at least not, he didn't get it for this movie, that's for sure. I think the only Academy Awards this got nominated for was like sound design, was all it got nominated for.
Yeah, no, I mean Mel Gibson in general. I mean, he never won an Oscar for acting, right?
I would imagine not.
I think, yeah, I mean, yeah, he's good. That's all I gotta say.
Wago, why don't you wrap us up? Stephen Wago, I should specify, wrap us up on Mel Gibson's performance in The Patriot.
It was nothing special, but by no means was it bad. With what he was given to work with, he did a fantastic job in the movie. So nothing seemed out of place. He seemed to fit the role perfectly, and I've got nothing much more to say that hasn't been said already.
All right, well, we talked about our hero. Let's talk about our antagonist of the film, Jason Isaacs as the villain, Colonel Tavington. This actor was in a number of other movies as villains. I most know him as Lucius Malfoy from the Harry Potter series. He's just got this look in his eyes of a guy you just want to detest. And all throughout this movie, he's doing things from burning people in a church, he's killing young kids, showing absolute disregard for the rules of war. Even his own superiors were coming down on him all throughout the movie. Dude, chill. You're giving us a bad name from doing all this stuff. Tremendous performance, honestly, in my opinion, probably the star of the movie, even though you only get to see him like a handful of times. But Steven, why don't you start us off? What did you think about our villain of this movie, Jason Isaacs, the Colonel Tavington?
Dude was a badass and the only one with some common sense. The rules of war are fucking ridiculous. So I was glad for him to throw him aside, and he really did a good job of making you hate him, or in my case, liking him because I like heels. So it was fun. Like the scene when he shit. It wasn't him who shot the sun, right?
It was him who shot the sun.
Yeah.
It was him who shot the sun? I thought so. Okay. Yeah, that was fucking awesome. So.
And then he rubbed it in his face later, remember?
Yeah, that was right. In their little encounter on the battlefield. So it was sweet. I really enjoyed him. I think you made a good point. He was the star of this. And honestly, if they hadn't had such a strong villain, I would have given up on this film altogether. It really did piece him and Mel Gibson well together. So. Great role, great acting, and honestly, I wish we had more of him.
Johnna, what'd you think of our villain?
I agree with Steven. I loved hating this guy. Well, he just loved him. I loved hating him. And I actually had no idea that was Lucius Malfoy at all. But again, this is a 14-year-old 14-year-old movie, so I guess that makes sense. But
it's also different when you have the big platinum blonde hair that he has.
Yeah, that's kind of his signature, isn't it? But I loved hating this guy, and he was a very strong character. And like Steven said, without him, you wouldn't really... It just wouldn't be what it was. And honestly, you wouldn't feel so happy at their victory if it weren't for him being such a complete and utter jackass.
Tony, what'd you think about our villain, Jason Isaacs, the Colonel Tavington?
He's the man. He's the best character in the whole movie. I obviously don't agree with the politics of the character itself. You know, I'm not a big supporter of, like, blindly murdering people and everything, but in the context of the movie, he's definitely the most entertaining. And who knows, maybe somebody can get a fan theory out there that it turns out he's actually the titular character. He's the Patriot fighting for England, as opposed to Mel Gibson, who's fighting against America, then pro-America, only when he gets personally involved.
It's funny you say that. When I was doing some background research about this movie, a lot of these characters were based on actual historical people in the Revolutionary War. And the guy Colonel Tavington was based on, there's actually a lot of heat on the filmmakers from the British government because they feel like they took this guy who was a war hero to England and made him look like an asshole.
There you go, see? Colonel Badass.
Yeah, fuck her to make this film.
Eddie, why don't you round us out? What'd you think of Jason Isaacs?
Excellent. By far, I think it's the role that really invites you to really believe in the movie, right? I mean, everything else is kind of... I mean, Heath Ledger was great. Mel Gibson was great. You know, everything was, you know, great as far as the movie is, as far as it can go. But I think he took it a step further. He made everything believable. He made everything less cheesy because things were actually, you know, serious, and it made Mel Gibson's triumphant, you know, flag run, you know, kind of noteworthy. You know, it made it really special. Like, wow, you know, despite all of this, you know, bloodshed, you know, they're fighting back and they're finally going for it, and you know, it made things more poetic in a way. You know, you have that it's the archetype of, you know, the great evil that must be defeated, and in the end, kind of is. And that role was really what tied all that together.
Eddie, why don't you follow it up? Why don't you just give us a recap of the surrounding cast? Like you said, we had Heath Ledger playing as one of the sons, and we had a bunch of other people throughout the cast. I couldn't even name them all, but you had one guy playing a slave throughout this movie who eventually earned his freedom from fighting in the militia. He also had a guy who was bashing throughout it, eventually turned his ways and invited the slave as a friend. There was a love interest for Heath Ledger. A symbol of Roland Emmerich's movies always has tons and tons of people with lots of things going on. What'd you think about the surrounding stories?
No, it was really good. I mean, that's why when I said it was a serious movie, I mean, there was no room for anything. You know, there were no loopholes in the characters' lives. Everything was kind of there was a whole universe over there. You know, even though everything was centered around Mel Gibson's family and this evil general, it's just it rounded up really nice. And if you look at any movie that stood out in the history of Hollywood, the entire cast has to be good, or else.
Mm-hmm. I think you hit the nail on the head. Roland Emmerich, what I think, like I was saying, he's guilty of this in his other movies, and oftentimes he spends too much time on these side characters. I think he really perfected it in this movie to the point where these characters have enough of a personality to seem fleshed out and make this world feel real without getting lost in the shuffle of all these characters. The best thing I would compare it to would be like 2012, where there's just 100 people with things going on. You don't even care about whoever the main character is because there's so much other crap going on. But
yeah,
Tony,
that's it.
Why don't you follow up? What do you think about our surrounding cast?
All right. One that I have to point out that I didn't like, Adam Baldwin. He felt so out of place.
He really did.
It was like, all right, I'm supposed to believe this guy's in colonial time for either side? No, not at all. But actually, my two favorite characters in the entire film are his son, Gabriel, Heath Ledger's character, and his love interest, Anne. And it annoys the crap out of me that they die in the movie, because I forgot that part going into watching this the second time, and all I had remembered was one of the sons dies at the beginning. So when they killed off the one who's like the second oldest son, I didn't really care too much about his character, but he served his purpose perfectly fine. Same as pretty much everybody else does. The little girl that doesn't talk and all that, like they're fine. They kill off the one guy, and I'm like, okay, that's the one who dies, and, you know, everything's okay with Heath Ledger's character. And then when the two of them die, I'm just like, son of a bitch, why didn't you kill off, if you needed to kill one other person off in this movie, you could have killed off Mel Gibson at the end and kept these two characters, because I liked them the best out of everyone. Heath Ledger's, like, got the most honor behind him than anybody. His girlfriend's adorable, and that would have been nice.
Oh, you sound like you're crying.
little bit. No. No, Adam Baldwin is the only one I really have any kind of problem with. Everybody else either did their job admirably or good enough.
You're just hating on Baldwins. And I have a feeling this won't be the last time we hate on a Baldwin tonight.
I tell you what, if they would have added Stephen Baldwin in his place, it might have been funnier.
Johnna, what'd you think of our surrounding cast in this movie?
I really liked the surrounding cast. Again, just like he said, I really, really loved Heath Ledger's character. He had just so much going on. But who I really just got a kick out of was Heath Ledger's girlfriend's father, the one that was hard of hearing. He just really loved to screw around with Heath Ledger so much. And I just got a big kick out of it. I loved it so much.
If I was hard of hearing like that, those are the same jokes I would be playing on people.
Yes.
All right, Steven, why don't you wrap us up on this one?
I think they did a great job as far as fleshing out the world goes and everyone having an identity and a bit of a backstory, but at the same time, I think if you cut some of that out, this film wouldn't have been so fucking long and dragged on so long. So it's a compliment, yet a detriment to the film at the same time for me. And the only characters that I really managed to pay attention long enough to really take in was Mel Gibson's oldest son, and that's really the guy that Johnna just mentioned, because his stupid-ass jokes are making me giggle.
Yo, nobody mentioned the French guy.
Oh, yeah, there was a French
Oh, yeah, he was funny. I liked him.
Yeah, when I first saw the movie as a kid, he was actually my favorite character the first time I saw it.
What is this, French Pride Film Day? What? Come on.
I also really liked
America. We don't mention French.
John, what were you saying?
I also really liked The Slave.
Oh, The Slave. Yeah, he was pretty good. He was stone-faced. You know, he didn't say a lot, but it worked really well for his character.
And he kept fighting even after his ear was up.
All right, guys. One thing that was really important for this movie is to make the setting look real. They went to all these places across colonial South Carolina and Virginia. I think they did a tremendous job getting some of these sets and all the places they filmed. One thing that actually caught that was pretty cool, the house that they go to that is Mel Gibson's sister-in-law's place is actually the same house from Forrest Gump. I don't know if y'all realized watching that. You could see like the white fencing around the house. Looks exactly like the same from that movie.
I don't remember Forrest interacting with them.
Well, let me get your guys' opinions on the scenery and the costumes. Did this make you feel immersed in 1776? Tony, start us off.
To tell you the truth, I really didn't notice, which means that it did its job. And there's one scene in particular that made me think that it all kind of came together, and that's when they're melting stuff to find material for more bullets. That scene was enough for me to buy into all this.
Eddie, what'd you think about our scenery?
Yeah, I mean, there's no way, you're gonna notice like, oh man, that X-ray, his phone was vibrating at that scene. It's like, no, everything was perfect.
Steven?
Not enough McDonald's to make it seem American enough. But it's kind of what Tony said. If you don't notice anything, that means they're doing a good job. Nothing seemed out of place where I went, that's fucking stupid. So, hey, it was fine for what it was.
I have this problem. Like, if these guys were fighting in formation, they would not be... No one's going to get that. Some nerd we were talking to at the DVD Games convention was hating on the Patriot. And he just could not get over the fact, like, if these people were fighting in formation like that, there's no way they'd survive. Well, that's why tons of people died.
Yeah, he had less of a problem with being able to see the camera equipment in the background of the one battle scene than he did with the formation and the historical reference of that kind of a thing.
Yeah, well, he has to remember that like gunpowder was relatively new. I mean, it was sort of had only been around for like 150 years, 200 years in battle. So formation was very, very. It was really square. I mean, they didn't really figure out this whole like jungle tactics kind of stuff You know, the Americans did, but the British are just like single file, like walking towards, you know.
Well, heck, that's pretty much like the saving grace of the Americans in the movie is that they break away from that typical stand in a line and fire, and they actually start using something a little bit more creative at the end.
Hey guys, you know it'd be a great idea if we don't stand in front of the bullets.
Do you think that would have been a tactic that they figured out 5 minutes into fighting?
Mm-hmm.
Rather than years and years and years.
I think it's Mel Gibson's at the top of the house watching them fighting out in the field, and even he's just sitting there like shaking his head. He's like, "What's wrong with you guys? Why are you just standing there in the field eating bullets?"
Right.
Idiots.
Well, you know, like the thing is, battlefields in Europe were all like literally that. It was just fields.
Yeah, whoever gets the first go though is like the winner already.
Mm-hmm. Well, Johnna, wrap us up. What'd you think about our setting?
It was seamless. I didn't have any issues with it. Again, like Steven and everyone else said, if you don't notice anything, that's a good thing. I really did not. At one point, I did not feel like I at any point got broken away from the plot or the surroundings. I felt like I was actually immersed. Everything was wonderful as far as the surroundings go.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about our director of this film, Roland Emmerich. German guy, known for making these big summer explosion-filled movies. He did Independence Day, he did 2012, he did The Day After Tomorrow, he did that Godzilla movie that came out in the late 90s. His thing is just boom, boom, big explosion, boom, boom, boom. What did you guys think about this movie in that guy's library? I think this is a bit of a stray from it, but let me get what you guys think of this compared to those. Tony, what'd you think of it?
Emmerich is kind of a hit or miss sort of guy. This one isn't as, I don't want to say simple, but maybe that's the best word that I could put it. You take a movie like a Godzilla, and you could tell that it's really just kind of dumbed itself down. And this isn't as bad as that. And then, this might be an unpopular opinion, but the most recent Emmerich film that I've seen was White House Down. And I actually really enjoyed that movie a lot. I went there to see it just because I was bored and I saw it in the middle of the day for like $5 or something like that. And I ended up liking that more than half the movies I saw that year. So he's kind of, he's in the middle of that kind of stuff. And this movie is more... I don't even want to say Oscar-worthy either. I don't want to go to two extremes. Between his type of films that he's had in his library, this one's actually a pretty good one.
Eddie, what do you think about this film compared to the other works of Roland Emmerich?
Yeah, I didn't see White House Down, but I mean, The Patriot seems like the absolute best movie he's ever done. I don't know his entire library, but here's the thing: he seems to me like a cheap version of James Cameron.
Yeah, he'll also be compared to Michael Bay a lot, but he's definitely James
Michael Bay is like a cheap
brand.
version of this guy. But like here's the thing: James Cameron's like blockbuster genius because his movies are good and they sell out like crazy. And this guy, Emmerich, Roger Emmerich, what is his name?
Roland Emmerich.
Roland, yeah, sure, yeah, Roland Emmerich, and. He's all right. I mean, Independence Day was cool. I mean, I saw him when I was a kid, so I mean, it was cool. And Godzilla. You're talking about the Godzilla from '98, right?
That is it. Yep.
Yeah, that was shitty. 2012 wasn't as bad as I heard everybody say it was. People were telling me like, 2012 is the shittiest movie of all time, and I'm like, no, it's not that bad. It's whatever. Man, he's all right. Yeah, The Patriot's the best movie.
Johnna, what'd you think about this compared to the rest of the works of Roland Emmerich?
From looking at the list of everything he's done, it actually seems like he seems to work on a lot of movies that are just jam-packed with special effects and things like that. So this was definitely took a step in the other direction with that because there weren't as many like CGI things or stuff like that. But I think it was a good thing. It's always important to step away from what you're used to and try something different. So there's nothing wrong with that.
You hear that, Michael Bay?
Steven, wrap us up, man.
I haven't seen fucking any of this guy's movies other than Godzilla.
Really?
And now that I know he made that piece of shit, go fuck yourself.
I liked The Day After Tomorrow. There were some parts I wanted.
Oh my god, that was just two?
Yeah.
I wanted to punch him in the face at some points, but other points I thought it was good.
I made so much fun of that movie. Like I watched it with my brother. So funny.
Let's put it this way. Roland Emmerich only has 2 movies that have a fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and they are Independence Day and this movie.
So basically the only thing he can do is murk.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I haven't seen enough of his shit to really, and I say shit literally at this point, to comment on how it fits in, but hey, you did better than Godzilla. Good for you.
There you go. All right, guys, let's take this down to what we think our favorite scene and least favorite scene from seeing this movie was. Steven, why don't you start us off? Your favorite and your least favorite scene.
Douchebag shooting his son. That was awesome. He's such a prick, and I love it. As far as least favorite scene goes, can I just, group all the talking scenes and put them together?
Sure.
Yeah, there you go.
Johnna, how about you?
To be honest with you, my favorite scene was when they went to the British camp and to rescue all of their soldiers and left behind a bunch of straw men trying to convince them that it was British soldiers, but it was really just straw men. Yeah, and when he walks back there and he's like, "Here's one of our captured soldiers, sir."
Very clever. And another thing I like on that scene is when he's leaving, he brought the dogs like a peace offering, but just as he's leaving, he calls the dogs and they follow him leaving.
I know.
Such a clever fox, that Mel Gibson. Tony, what was your favorite and your least favorite scene?
What about my least favorite?
Oh, you didn't. I'm sorry, Johnna. Please.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
To be honest, most of the beginning, especially the part where they're all bickering back and forth in the courtroom of sorts, I just couldn't keep my attention on it.
Tony, least favorite and favorite.
I'm going to go the total opposite. Least favorite, just pick a random scene in the middle. I just couldn't get into most of those scenes. Maybe something with Donald Logue or something. And my favorite scene, and this is the part where right after this is when it dips down for me, is after they've killed the first son and they're doing that sniper scene with the 2 littler kids. And it's I don't know if you could call it an ambush or whatever, but the group of the soldiers that they're slaughtering by themselves, that's my favorite part of the movie.
That was really cool.
It's a very infamous scene for that movie. They call it the tomahawk scene because of that little axe that he uses. That was always an iconic thing of that movie for me. But Eddie, why don't you wrap us up on this one? Your favorite and least favorite scene from The Patriot.
Well, my least favorite, it's I just don't think that kind of scene belongs in that kind of movie. I mean, if you do something a little more serious, a little more period, stop with the cheese. So the flag running towards the redcoats. It's cool, but I have to say it's my least favorite. I thought it didn't belong in that kind of movie. It's kind of out of place,
Sometimes the cheesiness is just too much for folks.
It could have been a great movie, but it's too much Hollywood kind of perfect ending, Cinderella story, that kind of stuff. Otherwise, I had a few key elements that did it for me. I think it was cool, when they were melting the little. What were those things?
Little soldiers.
Yeah, there you go. I think it shows just how poor that militia was against the British invasion, so to speak. And it really puts things into perspective. I mean, that's how dire the situation was for the American colonists, and against that big juggernaut of an army. But the tomahawk was also cool.
Let's wrap this up, guys. Final question going around to you about The Patriot. I'm going to ask you guys, did this movie make you feel pride in America? And what is your final rating on a scale of 1 to 10? Eddie, please take that up.
A scale 1 to 10? 11.
What?
Nah, just kidding. I just like to say 11.
This doesn't go to 11. This isn't Spinal Tap.
Yeah. I'll tell you later why I have an inside joke with 11, but I don't know. I'll give it a 6 because it's a respectable movie, and it does show the struggle, against the evil British Empire, whatever.
Just above average. All right, Johnna.
Yeah, it's a 6.
Did this make you feel American pride, and what's your final rating out of 10?
I'd also give it maybe a 5 or a 6. It was well done, and like you said, it was respectable. The acting was solid, and the plot was solid too. I just could have done without some of the filler. I'd say out of all the movies we watched, this is the one that gave me more pride than the others. It's the beginning of everything. It's how it started. Of course, I'm sure some of it never actually happened, of course, because it's a movie. But, you know, the general idea of it gives me more pride than the others because it's where it all started.
All right, Steven, how about you? Final rating, and did this make you feel pride in America?
Well, that villainous dude made me feel pride in England. So. I say give a round of applause to him, everyone. As far as rating this movie out of 10 goes, yeah, I'm going to give it a 4. And honestly, it wasn't that much of a bad movie, just for my personal preference. I couldn't get into it. It was just way too slowly paced. It wasn't a bad movie, but it lost me halfway through, and that's not a good thing.
Not your cup of tea.
Tea. Tony, your final rating, and did this movie make you feel like an American?
Patriotism, yeah, it gets up there. I'm not going to go out and start waving my flag and running towards other people, but it did its job admirably fine. 6 out of 10 is another good rating, too, for this, because there's nothing offensive about the movie. It's not, like, really terrible acting. There's no horrible CGI. Everything kind of, it does its job, and that's what makes it something that people can kind of all agree upon, that it's like a basic standard movie. I know a lot of people that went to see this when it came out, and not to really make fun of the movie and them, but that they're kind of more along the lines of the simple moviegoers, and I'm a more cynical asshole who picks things apart. And to them, this is an amazing movie, should have won Best Picture, You could give them a movie that's more artsy and they'll think it's boring. You can give them something that's more of a blockbuster, and if they've heard people bitch and complain about it, like a Michael Bay thing, they'll bitch and complain. This is the type of movie that a lot of moviegoers can agree upon is at least decent, if not okay or good. And a quintessential high school movie. Exactly the type of movie that you would have in like a Warfare in America class or a history class. You'd pop that on. It's not going to be too odd of a movie to watch. It's not going to be too boring for the kids, and it will try to have some kind of a historical reference. So it does its job. 6 out of 10's a perfect score for it as far as I'm concerned. But if I want to watch a Mel Gibson movie, I'm in the mood for that. I'm going to pop in Lethal Weapon.
Man, Max.
Well, I think that's a good way to wrap this up, folks. We just finished talking about The Patriot here on the For Real Movie Club. We're going to take a short break for you folks listening live. If you're listening to the archive version on YouTube or Fanboys Anonymous, please go ahead and hit to the next video. We're going to be talking about Chuck Norris, roundhouse kicking communists, and Invasion USA. Live, folks, please stay tuned. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.